This is Audrey. Audrey, thank you for coming.
Hello.
Hi. I thought we might start by you talking about coming to Emory and what your life was like at Emory and what your interest in film was at that point.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I came to Emory to study neuroscience, and that was my main focus. I did research all 4 years that I was there, which was an awesome experience. I loved Emory, but I kind of, I'll go a little bit farther back. Before Emory, I was an actress. I had an agent and I acted in numerous things throughout high school. But I kind of moved away from that and started focusing more on like my math science stuff. I always thought I'd go to college. I loved math and science. So I ended up choosing to, after a gap year, go to Emory for neuroscience. And to bring it back to film, you all know Emory is a liberal arts college and you have to take writing requirements. So I was like, not excited about that until I noticed they offered screenwriting. And I thought that that would be much better for me than poetry or something like that, because I had read so many scripts, auditioned, and I knew how they functioned. And I thought I could just kind of like get through the class easily and focus on my math science stuff. But I kind of really enjoyed that class and fell in love with one of the shorts that I wrote. So I decided, since I had no idea how to use a camera or any of that sort of stuff, that I would take Film Media 101, which was, I took it in the Maymester with Rob. And that was probably the best way that I could have entered film on the other side of the camera, because deadlines, like you had to get your stuff done very quickly. I couldn't procrastinate. I couldn't be a perfectionist and not put it out there. I had to show it. And it just kind of went from there, me learning all of the different positions you can be behind the camera, how to put a story together from scripts through production, through editing and all of that. And since then, I decided not to go get my PhD in neuroscience and do my best to make a living in film. And now it is my life.
Amazing. And can you talk to us about the room that you're in there? Because not everyone knows, I think, where you are.
Absolutely. I'm on set right now. We're on location in East Point, Atlanta. We were shooting exterior of this beautiful old house earlier, and we're going to be in a old warehouse that we're making look like a used car lot after I get off of this interview. I'm in one of the trailers. This is where we usually keep the cast, but my team was nice enough to let me sit in an empty trailer to do this interview because it was light and quiet and all of that. So you see behind me, there's a couch, there's a restroom over there. That's the entrance door. And this is usually where our cast will hang out, get ready in between takes, all of that sorts of stuff.
Okay, and that's called there's two little living places in that trailer, so it's called a two banger, and there are 3 bangers and 4 bangers. It might be bigger. There's ones that are bigger.
One banger.
Oh yeah, 1 banger. Yes, very nice. And they have your contract when you're above the line will say what amount of space you get, by the way, for what that's worth. Okay, so will you talk to us about leaving Emory? And I think you were part of the Campus Movie Fest experience too, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that was the thing. That experience was what gave me the confidence to decide to try film full time, and see if I could make a living at something creative, which always seems risky. But yeah, I competed in Campus Movie Fest my senior year because, like I said, I got into it a little bit later, and I wanted to make an impression. So I did 3 films, one of which was a part of a class, also with Rob, and then the other 2 were mine. One was a documentary, and then the other one was a horror film. So those did pretty well. The film that I made with Rob's class, which was for the social justice category, was about sexual assault, actually 1/3 in the nation that year, which was really exciting. And my horror film got to go to Cannes. So I got to go to Cannes Film Festival because of Campus Movie Fest and experience that, which was overwhelming and inspiring. And I met so many people and learned so much at Cannes. But how well my films did in Campus Movie Fest, I remember my dad was not about me entering film. He was like, you need to get your PhD, you need to focus on your math science stuff. And after even just the Emory Festival, where they showed all the Campus Movie Fest from Emory, he kind of came up to me and was like, I think you may be able to make this work. I support you attempting to do this as a career. So that was a huge deal for me personally. So my film went to Cannes actually the year after I graduated. I graduated in 2017 and I went to Cannes in May of 2018. So that whole year I was working on music videos, working on short films with small production companies. Actually did a lot of screenwriting that year. I wrote 2 features, and then I got to go to Cannes with a little bit of experience in the real world. So it kind of worked out perfectly for me. And since then, I was bartending for a few years and working on smaller productions, mostly music videos, a couple of commercials. I got to do on a Shack. And then because of COVID in February is when I got into this union film world with nice things like trailers and fancy walkies and all of that, and was able to transition to working in film full time and making a living.
Okay. And I'm trying to think. So let's see, you talked about starting in sciences, you talked about transitioning into film, trying film out. You talked about bartending. Can you talk a little bit about the stress financially of being in a freelance world, really, literally freelance world?
Absolutely. So I'm kind of a risk averse person. I think a lot of like stories that you hear from other people is like, I quit all of my jobs and just worked on films and I kept working on my shorts until they worked. I'm just not that person. I want to make sure that I have myself and my dog taken care of. So I was bartending over the few years after I graduated that I was still bartending. I was bartending anywhere between 3 days a week and really trying to focus on my shorts, or, in the times that I had more work, up to like sometimes I was having to do it 6 days a week, and I kind of I didn't write as much and stuff like that. So for me, bartending was great. I was able to actually save money while I did it. But I think that in order to make your creative career happen, I wish I had gotten out of it earlier. And that feeling of safety and all of that is like, it was very important to me. And I know why I made the decisions that I did, because I wanted to make sure I had rent paid. I wanted to make sure I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck, because that's just a scary thing. But I think that I wish I had gotten out of it earlier and been a little bit less risk averse and been a little bit more willing to take chances and follow up on opportunities and focus on my writing, because currently that's probably the thing that is having the most success outside of my day-to-day production assistant job that I have on these union sets. But you can get, even if it's a job that you feel like maybe you're more creative or more talented than that, get on these union sets, because you meet so many people that want to work with you, that you can barter your skills for their skills. They can bring their equipment to your shorts. And then all of a sudden you're getting to work on your creative stuff with other creative people, because you went through the union experience on these bigger sets, and you get a paycheck at the end of the day. So that'd be my advice about that. Rob, I can't hear you.
Darn it. That was a symptom of being old. I think I was unmuted when I was, anyway. I know Alexis is transitioning to working professionally, and I suspect there are other people in the room that are nervous about that or wondering about that. And I'm hoping that some folks in the room might have questions for Audrey. And I think it may be set up so only I can see the chats, but if you text a question in the chat, or if you just put your hand up, that would allow you to ask Audrey really anything. I think we can ask you anything, right?
Yeah, about it.
Yeah. Okay. So, but until someone has a question, I guess another thing that I'm curious about is, so you went up to Buffalo for a shoot, and can you talk about that lifestyle of moving from job to job and perhaps not staying in Atlanta?
So in the working in the union film world, in production specifically, I'm on the job for as long as we're physically shooting. I might have a few wrap days at the end or a few prep days at the beginning, but you have a job while we're shooting, and then you don't, and you're working on looking for your next job. And I'm sure most of you guys know this, but it's not like you can go onto the internet and look at Indeed and you'll see jobs posted about film. It's a lot about who you've met, who you work well with, and it's all word of mouth. So the ADs will recommend PAs and sort of bring on people that they know, or that people that they know and trust recommend. So it's a little bit scary first starting out on how to get that initial interaction and meeting with somebody who works in film and union film where they do pay you well and consistently, and then doing a good enough job that they'll want to bring you on to the next one. But once you have those connections, each show just has rolled directly into the next show or movie. So for me, I haven't spent more than a week out of work since I started in the union world. That's not what happens to everybody. A lot of the PAs I work with might go weeks or months without having another show. So that can be definitely scary, and they'll Uber or DoorDash or something like that to make their money. But if you work well with people and you're proactive, you can keep getting jobs pretty consistently. So when I wrapped my show over the summer, I got a call at the wrap party about a opportunity to take, it was a promotion. So I work as the key production assistant, which is I manage all the other production assistants. So that was my first time being offered that job, but it was in Buffalo, New York for 2 months, which is very far away from home. I'm from the South. I've not spent much time at all up north, but because it was the promotion, I took the opportunity to go up there. And it was, when I first went up there, I was sleeping on an air mattress on the floor in a living room. And eventually they finally got me the hotel room, which I had been promised. But it was super fun, super great. About half the crew was from out of town. So we would all meet in the hotel, patio and after work. And it was kind of like summer camp. And like the first 3 weeks, it was great. Around week 4, it was like, okay, I miss the kitchen. I miss my dog. I don't know anybody around here. And so it's definitely, I don't want to discourage anybody, because getting to travel and see new things while getting paid and working in the movies is a dream. It's awesome. But it definitely hit a point by the end of the 2 months. I was very excited to come home, to have some normalcy, some routine, and be in my own bed and be able to cook. That was the thing that I missed the most, was always having to eat out or eat from catering. It's definitely a little bit of a nomadic kind of carny lifestyle to start with, because the hours are so long. You're moving to different locations all the time, but then not having any familiar place to come home to made it definitely felt like a long 2 months for sure.
We had another guest earlier in the semester, Monique Ganderton, and she actually did hers from a hotel room, and she talked a little bit about how some people like living in hotel rooms, but that she does not. But
yeah, I like the travel aspect a lot. I liked that I got to be paid to go see a new place and meet new people. That was really exciting. I think it was just the longevity of not having my own space, and that was a little bit tiresome to me.
Yeah. When my kid Blair, who's 17 now, when she was 3, I was working in Vancouver, and she came up to visit we were in New York then, and she came up to visit, and everyone stays at the Sutton place there. All the crews stay there, and the casts and whatnot. And she went up to some strangers in an elevator. She was a 3-year-old, and she said, "My daddy lives in a hotel house." And and my ex was like, "No, he doesn't. Daddy lives with us, you know." But it's it's a challenging life, I think, and people should be aware of that it's a challenging life. It looks like we have a hand from Sarah. I'm hoping Sarah, can you unmic and ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good. First off, I also came here thinking I was going to study neuroscience and switch to film as well. But I had a question about, so I'm someone from like a smaller area initially. Do you find that like if you want to pursue a career, especially in production, that you have to like be near New York City or LA or Atlanta and kind of have to stick to those places?
That's a great question, because when we were in Buffalo, we had this big $35 million film that I was working on. It was no small production. And because of that, Buffalo, even though it's like 4 hours drive from New York, I think, but they don't have a lot of local people to work. They have a couple of small production companies that have little sound stages there. So there is like commercial work and things like, it is a city that, there are companies that need commercials and stuff like that. But they don't have the infrastructure for big productions like Atlanta has multiple studios, New York, LA, of course. So they had to bring in a lot of crew from outside places, whereas shows that are shooting or films that are shooting in Atlanta, LA, or New York, they have a whole pool of professional, skilled people that they can pull from that can work as locals. So you get paid a little differently too. So you can kind of take the path of being a big fish in a small pond in the smaller area if there is some production there, and you'll immediately be pulled onto anything bigger that happens to come. But I would think that from talking to the other production assistants and other folks in other departments up there, the consistency of the film work up there is much, much lower. So even if you are like very skilled at your job, very proactive, you'll still have large breaks between when you're working, and very large breaks, potentially like only one or two big things come to Buffalo a year between when you're working on something that might be higher pay and, you know, higher quality production and like have a chance to really be seen by the world. So I think that that's one path that you could take. Those PAs work relatively consistently. A lot of them have another job in between, like bartending or working for a family company. But then no matter what film comes to that city, you'll be pulled on. But in Atlanta or another bigger city, maybe even New Orleans, I think there's a good amount of work there. You have the opportunity to work more consistently with more people that are local like you, so that you can work on your own smaller things with them and stuff like that. So I'd say it's kind of like, you know, 50-50 on, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond or be a regular sized fish in a bigger pond?
Yeah, I think another issue with that, I absolutely agree with Audrey, Sarah, but another issue is that if you're in a small market, a lot of the work ends up being like local car commercial, local car franchise commercial, or industrial video for, you know, a company that makes copper wire. And that can be fun, and it can be a fun life, but it's different. If you're based in a film center, you're more likely to get on interesting projects, you know, but projects, you're more likely to get on projects that have are for streaming services or the studios or whatnot, and there'll be less work that is we used to call it industrial based. Okay, it looks like we have Alexis with a question.
Yeah, so I know you spoke on you've had non-union and union experience, and I'm curious about what was the most significant adjustment or changes that you had to make from working on non-union productions to union productions.
That is a great question, and I have a quick answer for it. Union productions, you're not allowed to help other departments at all. So on non-union productions, like you can, you know, if you see what needs to happen, you can start helping it happen, like maybe moving a light stand, or, you know, maybe talking to cast, or whatever needs to happen. On union productions, it's, you know, it's not allowed for you to help outside. So as a production assistant, if I see something that needs to happen, I have to go find the human in that department a grip to move the light stand, or, you know, props to move their chair. I'm not even allowed to touch the cast chairs unless I get explicit permission. And that's to protect everybody's jobs and all of that sorts of stuff. So as a production assistant, that was the biggest sort of shift from non-union to union, is that you're all working together cohesively, but you're not allowed to step outside of your box. So you kind of are interacting a lot more with the crew, and you have to know who's in charge of what and all that sort of stuff, and make sure that you don't, you know, everyone's going to be polite about it, but if you cross those lines, you can get in trouble. The unions can get in trouble, and everyone sort of has their own specific lane that they have to stay in. So that was the biggest adjustment for me, because on those non-union sets, it's like, oh, let me help you with this. Oh, you dropped something, let me pick it up, you know. And on union sets, you have to kind of stay in your lane and go talk to the correct people. And at first, it felt inefficient and slow to me. I wasn't a big fan of it. But when you start seeing you have like a 75-person crew, people who put that thing there need to know where it was, because that's their one little job. And if they lost their thing, then they can't do their job. So it actually helps on these larger crews to be more efficient if you understand how each department works together and allow them to do their jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. And another thing about union crews, just to be conscious of this, is that everything works almost all the time. Whereas with non-union crews, it's rolling the dice, and which can be fun sometimes. But if it's a business, they want to know how everything's going to work, and a union crew where everything will work. So you're paying a little bit more in order to have control and security.
Workers, people in their department and are, very skilled in their specific little subset of making this film happen.
Edith, what did you want to ask?
Yeah, I'm wondering, you say you were hired as a production assistant in a union, and I'm wondering, will you always be hired as a production assistant, or like does the job change from production to production?
That's a great question. So I could be hired into other positions, but I'd have to be working for other unions. As a production assistant, I'm not yet in a union. So production assistant is a non-union job. I need 600 paid days as a production assistant to be able to get into the DGA, the Directors Guild, to work as an assistant director. So I'm working on creating what's called my book, where I have a call sheet with my name on it as a production assistant and a pay stub for every individual day that I've worked. And then I can submit that to the DGA along with a fee to enter into that union. And from then I can be hired on as an AD, which is my personal goal. It's a lot of hours working, sort of at the bottom of the totem pole. But then once you do get into the DGA, your paychecks are a lot bigger, and you get to have some more control over scheduling. And I like the sort of top-down picture of the production, so I can see how, like, okay, we need to bring in this actor at this time, or okay, we need to go to that location this day, and then switch. I like all of that scheduling aspect, which is why I think I want to be an AD. But being a PA, we're definitely some of the worst paid people on set, and we're not in a union, so we don't have as many of those like protections, like we don't have to eat lunch. They don't require that, and things like that. But if I wanted to work in props, I'd have to join the IATSE union. If I wanted to work in camera, I'd have to join 479. So each department has their own thing that protects their own jobs. But I'm working towards entering the DGA personally.
That was great. I have a couple of questions before we jump to Alexis, unless your question is about the AD department, Alexis.
Yeah, it's related to that, to Edith's question.
Please.
So once you enter the DGA, would you be allowed to, I suppose, like extend into another position? So for example, like if you would go into it as an AD, would you also be able to gain credit as a director, or once you're in the DGA for a specific position, that's it?
You can, yes. I think as far as I know, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're in the DGA, you can work as the second AD, the first AD. If you get a director's position, you can work as that as well. Whatever people hire you as, I believe.
I think that, I mean, my understanding of it is that the rule, if you're not financial core, which is a different thing. In some states, like a right to work state, you can work in union positions when you're not in a union. It's called financial core. If you're in the union, you have to follow the rules of the union. And I think if you change designations in the DGA, you pay to be in a different category. There's categories.
Yes.
So you have to be approved for that category, and you could be approved for it by being hired for a job.
Yeah.
So if you're not a union director, but you're hired if you're hired to direct, say, a show for 20th Century Fox, which is a DGA signatory, they've signed a contract with the DGA. They have to make you a guild member to do the show. There's category. When you're in the guild, you're broken into different categories, and there's sets of rules for each category. But you can move from one to another. It's just as a set of rules for it.
I see. Thank you.
Audrey is your name. Hey, Audrey. sorry, it's late for me. I was shooting yesterday. Okay, so can you go through what the AD department does? Because I think people think there's a path from second to director. So will you explain? It's a department, like camera department, or yeah.
Department, what we do is we're sort of like we're the organizers and the communicators on set. So I'll talk about my specific role in that first because I know it the best. So as the key production assistant, my job is to manage a team of other production assistants, some of which are staff, which means they're here every day for the show and they have a specific role. So background production assistant, their job is to manage the extras, check them in, make sure they get through hair and makeup and costumes, bring them to set, keep them quiet, keep them fed, check them out, all of that. We have one for first team, which is cast. We have one for walkie-talkies, which is hugely important on these union sets. Every department uses them. They're all on different channels. Transportation department has one. Everybody has their own channel where they're talking to their group. So those are like my core staff production assistants. And then when we have bigger days, I'll bring in extra people, which will help me with lockups. So making sure someone doesn't walk through the shot, isn't yelling near the tracks to ruin sound, things like that. So I'm managing this group of humans, setting lockups, interacting a little bit with each job to make sure that it's done correctly, or if someone needs to step off to the restroom or do, I don't know, a Zoom interview or something, that someone's in their place and that nothing falls through the cracks. And the people who are communicating to me what needs to happen are the ADs. So I usually am very close to set. I often stand with the director of photography, the DP, and communicate to my team, my ADs, what he needs to happen to get the shot. If he needs a few more minutes with lights, if he needs the stand-in to look a certain way, I'll be communicating over this. It's your best friend. What needs to happen to make us as efficient as possible. So that's probably, and then I'm communicating to all the other department heads, scripts, lighting, whatever, about meal penalties, just keeping everything flowing efficiently. Efficiency would be probably the thing that we do and that the ADs are trying to accomplish. And I'm like their right-hand man to delegate all of the tasks necessary to make this thing happen. So second AD works a lot with setting background actors. He's, I guess, my direct boss. And then the second AD is a whole nother job. They're mostly at base camp. They're not on set, and they're doing a ton of paperwork. They're scheduling and planning out the next day's call sheets. There's things called turnarounds. So we can't, end work at 12 at night and bring everybody back at 6. So if we're running late the day, the poor second AD is freaking out, trying to figure out, okay, how late do we have to push call times, communicating with producers, communicating with all of those people. And then the first AD is what you probably think of as an AD. They're right there next to the director. They might be yelling out rolls and cuts. They plan the shooting schedules. So when we're going to what locations, what days we bring in what cast. And they're the ones who are keeping us on time, telling the director, yeah, you don't have time for another take, or telling the DP, that light was fine. We don't have time for another take. We've got to move on because time is money in film. Is that a general overview, I guess?
No, that was excellent, and I have a different perspective on it, but that was excellent, and I hope you guys took away from that the AD department, they're kind of adrenaline junkies. They're people that are put under a lot of stress, 12 or 14 hours a day, and the first AD, I was having some happy memories of thinking of my different firsts, and sometimes they have headsets on and they'll be talking to people, they'll be talking to you, but they'll also be listening to conversations in their earpiece and sometimes talking to other people while they're talking to you. And one of the ADs that I really, there's her, yeah.
I took this.
You took it out?
Yeah, I took it off to focus on this, but there will be times I'll be on a phone call in one ear, listening to my walkie-talkie in the other ear and speaking to a human in the other. So you have to be a multitasker hugely because we're communicating, we're coordinating.
Yeah. Sometimes my favorite AD I'll be talking to him and he'll start swearing, like just under his breath, and I'll be like, does he have Tourette's or something? But he's swearing at the line producer, who's not even on set. like because of something that's happening in his head while he's listening to me. Now, the flip side of that is that like a first AD, they make the schedule for the production. They make the schedule for the production, and they part of their contract when they do a feature is that the schedule. And so when the production goes behind schedule, they've violated their contract and they can be sued. I just recently heard that this is still true, and unfortunately, one of my friends this happened to in the last few months, but the DGA has like a very, very rich pension fund, and it has a very rich pension fund because a lot of the ADs and line producers die in their 50s and 60s from heart attacks, from decades and decades of stress and overwork. So I'm not trying to dissuade you, Audrey, but I'm not sure that I could, but it's a difficult task to be in the AD department. It's a very challenging, it's exciting, and you're in control of a lot of stuff, and but it's a difficult task.
Yeah, I think I know what I'm getting myself into relatively well at this point in time, but definitely the highest stress department, because any issue in any other department is coming back to the AD because it's taking us off schedule. So efficiency, I think, was the word that I used to describe what our goal is. But it definitely, like, who your first AD is as someone who's in the AD department below has a huge effect on your day-to-day life, because it's a very high stress job, and the stress usually trickles down. So the way you handle stress as a person and how you sort of view your job is hugely important to how the whole entire set is running. It really comes back to like the top people, the DP, the director, and the first AD.
Yeah. Alexis?
Yes, so I have two questions. First, briefly, are there, especially for larger productions and union productions, are there multiple first ADs, or like are there different units for ADs, or it's just one across the board?
Yeah, so if your production is large enough, you might have two separate whole units. So you'll have your main unit where you have your main director, your main DP, your main AD, but you might have a smaller second unit, which works as its own film pretty much on its own, that is shooting maybe like B-roll stuff, exteriors, some of the smaller scenes with actors, maybe some of the more complicated camera moves that will take a whole day to do this one shot. And there'll be a separate AD for the second unit than the first unit, first AD. And then on TV shows, each alternating episode has a different first AD because they have to prep the shooting schedule with the director of the episode while the previous episode is filming, which is why, so if I was the first AD on a TV show, I'd be prepping an episode, say episode 3. I'm prepping it while episode 2 is actually shooting, and then I'll shoot episode 3, and then I'll prep episode 5 while 4 is shooting, and so on. So on this show, I'm working on a TV show right now, we'll have different ADs every 7 to 9 working days as each episode switches.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is, how did you know you were prepared or ready enough before making your transition from non-union to union productions regarding the terminology and the knowledge about all of the responsibilities?
I didn't. It kind of fell in my lap. So I was, one of my other hobbies is I'm a competitive ballroom dancer. So I met a filmmaker who works as a second AD in union films through that. And he offered me a job in the COVID department, which is why I was saying COVID was my catalyst to get in. I don't think he would have offered me a job as a PA because I hadn't really proven myself to him, even though I had a resume with my non-union stuff on it. But if we're hired on as a PA and we don't do well, or we mess up a shot or something, it looks bad on the person who recommended us. So I got to sneak in through the COVID department, where I'm a COVID monitor on set, making sure people kept their masks up and things like that. And from there, I was able to show that I was I guess, proactive enough. They actually would pull me in to help as a PA here and there. And one of the ADs on that job suggested that I get hired on as a PA, and I got to switch over. But I think most PA teams and AD teams that I've worked with love to teach. If someone's recommended you and thinks that you'll do well, we will come give you an overview. We'll help you learn how to listen to your walkie, because that is hugely important, the walkie terminology, that sort of stuff. And we generally, PAs will start in lockups that are further away, so they aren't super likely to walk directly through the shot or something like that until they get the flow, because it really is sort of a flow thing. But you just have to do it. Fake it till you make it, imposter syndrome. Like, pay attention. And that's when you're on those union sets, paying attention to the flow will be your best friend. If you're able to do that, you can be a PA.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. And, you know, Monique said a similar thing. She came in, she was a model, and then she was an actor, and she started just talking with the stunt department, and they slowly got to know her, and then she got to do stunts. And it really is, production is a place where if you're you don't have to be super friendly, but what you have to do is be helpful and kind. And if you do those two things, people will want you around, and they'll want you to help in their departments. And that's the way you end up getting promoted from COVID to PA, or from PA to camera department. It's really about figuring out how to function and help people on the set. Oh, Michelle.
Hey, Audrey, it's really good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Hi, I just wanted to ask if you could walk us through sort of like what I'm sure you don't have an average day to day, because I'm sure it shifts all the time, but if you could just like talk us through like what I know, and I know call times change too, but like what is your average day like? When do you start? What kinds of things are you doing? Kind of give us a sense of what it's like to be in the mix like you are.
Sure. So I would say usually earlier in the week on Monday, we have an early call time. Maybe I, as a PA, will have to show up at 6 a.m. The rest of the crew would show up at 7. And as the week progresses, our call time usually progresses later, because we always run late. And then because of the turnarounds, we have to make it later. So usually by the end of the week, our call times may be around noon, and we're going to go till midnight. So that's sort of the basis of the call time. So I show up about an hour before crew does. It's me and a few other PAs that might be getting breakfast order for casts who have to show up early to get their makeup done, making sure we have all the paperwork needed to distribute. It's called distro to the crew. Like, our script supervisor might need pages of the scripts to write on. Everybody has what's called a call sheet with everybody's name, position, what time they're supposed to be there, casts, what scenes we're shooting, and then sides are the little bit of the script we're shooting that day, so everybody can see the words. So I'll get everything set up, figure out where in physical space things need to be so they won't be in the shots, and just sort of organize everything so when the AD, the director, and the DP show up, they can just fall right in and start working on their creative stuff. Then during the actual shooting, when we're not rolling, is kind of when I'm running around a lot and my team's running around a lot, taking care of casts, feeding them, making sure their wires are good for sound. And then while we're rolling, everybody has to be in their specific lockup, going around saying shh, which is probably the worst part of our job. The crew does not like it. They have their stuff they're supposed to be working on, and we're hindering that, but we're all there to make a TV show or a movie at the end of the day, so mostly they're respectful. So there's a little bit of downtime occasionally in my day if we have a really long camera setup. So if we have like a ton of lights we have to set up around, then the people who are working at that point in time are the grips, the electricians who set up the lights, and those sort of folks. But as a key PA, since my job is to communicate from the bosses and I hang out with the DP, I'm usually so busy at that point in time communicating what the DP needs to the other departments, like maybe set deck, he might need to move a chair or something like that. And then lunch is always crazy busy because I'm moving casts around, making sure everybody's fed, bringing food to the directors, all that sort of stuff. After lunch, which happens 6 hours after we start, which is 7 hours for me because I'm in an hour early. Same thing, back to lockups, If we have any truck moves, it always gets insane. Like today we had to move from a house all the way over to this warehouse 15 minutes down the road. So everybody's frantically packing up and unpacking. And then, so you do all of that again for however many hours after lunch. When you wrap, I have to head back to base camp where I am now with the trailers and get all the paperwork together to sign out casts to make sure they're all paid accurately for the time they were there. Any meal penalties, if they went more than 6 hours without eating, I have to calculate that. Time cards for everybody I have to file and submit. So it's paperwork and organization in the morning, paperwork and organization in the evening, and then a lot of shushing and talking to people during the day for me. And then I'm usually there an hour to an hour and a half after wrap. Then I go home, maybe sleep for 6 hours, come right back.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Audrey, you'd appreciate this. Blair, who's 17 now, they did their first day as a PA yesterday, and they were very excited to see their name on the call sheet, you know, yeah, with next to PA, Blair Barracano. And they texted me this morning that when they got home, they fell asleep with their mask on. They're so it's exhausting. That sounds like that day is it 15 hours? That sounds like 15 hours, something like that.
At less than 14. Usually I'm every once was 12, but I'm usually somewhere between 14 and 16.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. That's a lot. It's a lot.
It is, but to me it's worth it to build my book so I can work as an AD who they work insanely hard as well, but they usually get to go home a little earlier than me.
They go home a little earlier, yeah. I'm trying to think of what else to ask you. Boy, there's so much good stuff. Why do you eat 6 hours after call time? Do you know?
Union rules. I think we have to be fed 6 hours after call time. Otherwise we start getting the meal penalties. But I guess that's just what the union has deemed humane to us.
It's actually the government. It's illegal to make them continue working. Yeah, the meal penalty thing, I can't figure out how they do it because it's illegal. You have to give people a break every 4 hours and an opportunity to eat every 6 hours.
Wow.
So when they do a meal penalty, they're breaking the law, you know.
That sounds
yeah. Okay. Alexis, do you have anything off the top of your head for, Audrey, who could they talk to? What should they do? Say Stevie, who lives in Philadelphia and hasn't done any set work yet. What should Stevie do to try to get into work?
I would recommend just making it known in any like Facebook groups that you're green but available. If any of your friends are like, I need help on a short film, it's going to be no pay and I might not even feed you. Show up, do it, learn the stuff, put it on your resume, get a resume together. Because if you ever do happen to run into somebody or a friend of a friend knows somebody who's in the union world, be like, hi, I've got a little resume. I, have been on set a few times, so I know a little bit of the terminology. When they interview you, that will help. And then I guess just be, make it known what you want to do. If you put that out there on your Facebook, join Facebook groups. There's a great one for PAs in Atlanta. Tell your friends there's might be a family member who works there, whatever. Then you put that out in the world and eventually someone's going to need some help and give you a shot. And, if you show up, you're proactive and you pay attention, then someone's going to notice and you'll get another shot and it'll snowball from there.
Okay, and Liam, I'm hoping, I don't know if Liam's there, but if you are there, Liam, I'm wondering if you have anything to ask Audrey. I know you're doing a very ambitious student film right now. Did you disappear? I think he's not going to be able to ask us. Okay, so you have lunch at 6 hours. You talked about talk about actors checking people in. And by the way, this is another AD department thing. Is yesterday I was standing next to an extra looking at a stunt rehearsal, and the extra was talking to me and I was being polite, and then the extra asked me if they could say if they could shout the person who falls over their name, James, when when during the scene. Audrey, can you explain what that is? What was about to happen?
He's trying to get a line,
Yeah.
because line a lot more. You might even get some SAG credit that can help you get into that, the Actors Guild. So that's another union for performers, speaking performers and stunts. But as an extra, you're just kind of like moving set decoration. So you don't get paid like if you were a cast. So that he's being a little sneaky about trying to get a line for that pay bump and the SAG credit. Extras do it all the time. Extras are lovely. We need them very, very much, but they are always a handful. It's like babysitting.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like when he said that, I was like, oh, I started thinking about that. I was like, aha, I know what you're doing, you know?
That part of the PA's jobs, especially if like the key PA or other folks who are around what we call the adults, the DP, the director, and the AD, if we're around the adults, part of our job is to protect them because they work creatively, or the AD works like insane amounts of like pieces to this puzzle of the film in his head that he's or her or they that they're reorganizing all the time to keep us on track. And some extra asking for a line is not beneficial to the goal. So it hurts the efficiency. So part of, and cast too, is part of our job is to sort of protect them, keep extras from speaking to them, keep people from talking to them about things that aren't important right now that we could talk about at lunch, we could talk about later, so we can get what's happening right now done as beautifully as possible, as efficiently as possible, and have a really, really good, I guess, to edit together at the end of the shoot.
Now, are you allowed to tell us about the show you're on, or did you sign a?
I did not. I can tell you I am on a show that it's a Warner Brothers TV show. It will show on the CW. It is in the DC universe. So we have some superpowers and some stunts, some explosions. And it will premiere on the 1st of January, which is actually the 11th of January, which is before we finish shooting. So we have to finish shooting on time.
How does a day change is a stunt day different than an effects day? Do you have stages and location shooting, or is it all location, or is it
mostly stages? We mostly shoot on stages because it is like a 10 episode TV show. So we are in the home of the lead character a lot, in her school. And then this second on the call sheet has a dojo that we're in a lot. So we have a ton of our sets built on the stages. So I would say for every 5 days we're on stages, we're on locations 1. We're currently in a chunk of like 4 days on location, which I think is more fun. It's definitely more stressful, but there's just a lot more to organize, which I enjoy. Stunt day versus special effects days. We have a stunt or a special effects most days. Some days both. Our lead character skateboards a lot. So that's we have a specific stunt double for action scenes for her and a separate one for skating. Oh. And I think everything moves a little slower when we need a special effect or a stunt. One of our ADs is amazing about that. We have insane safety meetings. We have, just everybody is chill. He's super chill when we have those things, because safety is, I guess, more on the forefront of everyone's minds when we're doing something somewhat dangerous, like blowing up a trash can or, people dodging punches. Stunt days are my favorite. Stunt performers are very cool, very chill. And I enjoy being around them, and they kind of change the environment, the feel on set, and the cast are very focused when we're doing stunt days because they've trained, they've practiced. So it's always a lot of fun to also see the stunt guys like dress the same, doubling these people. So overall, I think it's kind of, every day is different, just like every day is the same. Like stunts and special effects don't change it too much, maybe the vibe on set a little bit, the pace.
Cool. How should these guys dress when they're interns or PAs, or how do you dress? What do you wear? Do you bring any clothes?
Yeah, so comfortable dark colors if you have them, not always necessary, but in case you need to be like cueing an actor close, they wouldn't want your red shirt reflecting off of the window. I'm wearing blue today, but usually I wear black leggings, hiking shoes or tennis shoes, comfortable t-shirt. This is another one of my best friends, my fanny pack, because I don't like to wear things with pockets. So I have like my call sheets, my sides in here. I'll put my walkie-talkie on there, bandana to clean up spills, extra batteries, pins, Sharpies, all of that sorts of stuff. So make sure you're able to be light on your feet, dressed appropriately for the temperature, because if you're cold, no one cares. You're still on that walk up way out in the woods, and I'm sorry. Should have brought a hat. And I think most of my team chooses to wear athletic clothes or comfortable clothes. As a female, I personally prefer to cover myself somewhat. There's a ton of people on set, and I feel like, there's part of the beauty of film. I'll say it this way. Part of the beauty of film is there's people from all walks of life that are there coming together to create this thing. Crazy different backgrounds, crazy different stories. So when I'm on set, I want to dress as inconspicuously as possible so that we get our job done and that people are talking to me as the PA and nothing else.
Alexis?
Yeah, so I know you talked a lot about the stress levels regarding like the difficulties of the job and the labor of the job. And then also like PAs have like a shorter turnaround time frame. So what are some decisions that you make at an individual level or even like your team to ensure your own safety and health as well?
Absolutely. Especially on a longer running show like this one, this has been going since the summer and it will go until the end of January. You become a little family. So if you do get on a longer term thing like this, you will be able to take days off. I gave one of my PAs a day off the other day because he had to get his oil changed and like work on car registration and DMZ or not DMC, driver stuff. And so if you're on stuff like these longer shows, we will give people days off to do life, because when you're working 16 hours a day, Monday through Friday, you don't have time to do things when things are open. As for me, I try not to overschedule myself. I kind of am looking at this PA time as doing my time to be able to get into the DGA, be an AD, and live a slightly more comfortable lifestyle. But I also legitimately enjoy the high levels of stimulation. We might call it stressful, but to me, it just feels like there's always something that needs to be worked on, always something that needs to be fixed. And if you're the type of person who gets like excited by solving problems and you don't get too flustered when someone's like, why isn't this working? Or why didn't this happen yet? And you can explain it easily, like concisely, then you're going to fit like right in the PA team. But I definitely like, if I need a day off on these longer shows, I ask for it. Another thing you can do is not accept jobs back to back. So some people in my teams, after they finish a long show like this, they'll be like, I'm not taking another PA job for 2 months. I need to get my life together. I need to rest. I need to work on my hobbies. And then they'll accept a job later. For me, like I said, I want to get my days. I want to get those 600 days. So I want to keep it rolling. But weekends are sacred. I learned recently not to overschedule myself on those weekends so I can catch up on sleep. And I don't go out after we wrap. A lot of people do. I don't know how they do it.
Thank you.
Boy, I'm trying to think of what else we should ask you. We talked about clothing. We talked about your day, the way your day works. Oh, here's a question. I was always terrified to take time off. Like, I think I didn't feel safe not working until I was about 38. Like, if I got called and I wasn't working, I would work.
Yeah.
Is that, you talked about people being like, I'm going to take a month off now.
Well, I can say this. I don't want to scare anybody away. I haven't worked with any of those people again. And the team that I'm working with, so it is a lot about who you know and how you work with people. And I think in any department, but being a PA isn't a super skilled job other than interpersonal skills. So if your boss likes working with you and he tells you like, hey, go get this thing done. You're not going to be like, how do I do it? What should I do? You're going to be like, let me figure this out. Let me go ask another PA how to do it. I'm not going to bother him with this. And your boss sees that it gets done in a timely manner. You're going to be back. especially if you can laugh with him or her or they. And so I think for me, I wouldn't say I'm terrified of taking time off, but I don't want to. I want to show up for these ADs that like to work with me, and that I have like, you know, that they want, the ones that want to bring me back. I want to show up every time so I can get my days, and I can, I guess, keep having that high stimulus level of being on set and working and always having that problem to solve. And at the end of the day, I go home exhausted, but I usually go home pretty fulfilled because I knew I put out 8 fires and my AD didn't even know that thing was going wrong because I fixed it before it went wrong. And that show is better. And, you know, because of me, even though no one will probably even notice my name at the bottom of the credits.
That was great. That was great. Alexis, what do you got?
Yeah, so I had one last question. So how far in advance do you seek newer positions when you know that the current one might end soon, or like the season is coming up to an end? Or
right. So that, again, at the level I'm at as a PA, it's not so much seeking. It's about maybe letting some folks know that I'm available. That's what I've heard from my friends. Luckily for me, I've had a new job before any job wrapped. You know, I guess I've gotten a few ADs that like really like to work with me, and, you know, they bring me along on everything. They'll ask me to join them. So the only job that I didn't have a job by the time we wrapped was the one I took in Buffalo. So that was the day of our wrap party, which was 2 days after we wrapped the show. So I had a couple of job offers over those couple of days. So things were coming in for me. I guess the earliest is I got a job offer today for 2 days after this show wraps, to work a project that will go until April. So it's, again, back to who likes working with you. And I've turned down 4 or 5 job offers since I joined this show. I didn't join it at the beginning. I got brought on halfway through, which is a whole nother, like, joining in the crew after they've been working together for a month and a half, 2 months is a little rough. But I've had 5 job offers I've turned down since the early October when I took this one, because I'm working. But if you act excited about working with those people, keep me in mind. I finished the show on this day. Those offers will keep coming in. So the one I got today, which I actually could take if I want to, was an AD that I turned down a job offer for early October because of this job. He remembered when I wrapped and reached out to me again. So I think it's kind of up to you and your connections. And then if you are off a job with, no job, and next to it, people just say they send a text to all the ADs who they've worked with that they think like them, and let them know, hey, I'm available. You have anything? And often they'll get at least additional days. Like I mentioned earlier, you have your core staff, which I've always worked as staff, but you can pick up days. Like if an AD really likes you, he might be like, oh crap, this is a crazy day. We have this huge field. I need 3 extra PAs. Text everybody they know. And then you can come in and get those little jobs that way.
Thank you.
Well, this has been really great. It would be really nice if you're willing to, for people to turn their cameras on and open their microphones to give Audrey a round of applause. Or it'll just be us. Hey, thank you, Jesse. That's so great. Donna, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Audrey, we're so grateful that you were here and able to talk with everybody. And the Facebook groups that you suggested, one of them, was it called Atlanta PAs? Oh, thank you, Leo.
PA Network, Atlanta PA Network. If anybody wants to reach out with me, I'm happy to give my social media or my email. If there's any questions, I can send all of those links and stuff. And you can send your resumes, because I am I turn down jobs here and there, and I'd love to have some other names I could give to people.
I keep thinking of questions. I just really quick, and I promise I'll let everyone off. Did you ever do the Georgia Production Assistant Academy or anything like that? Do you know anyone who has?
I thought about it. Yeah. No one I work with really had a couple of auditionals who came in who had done that. But my advice is start working. Just start working, start meeting people. If you know nothing about film sets in general, I think that might be really beneficial to you. But if you've been on some non-union stuff, general terminology, generally like what a camera department is, what the grip department is, what set tech is. I just don't think it's necessary, but it might be a way for you to meet other folks that have connections and you can get pulled on that way. But if you have other avenues into working, I would recommend starting to work.
Okay. Happy Hanukkah. Thank you again, Audrey. You were amazing. There'll be a copy of this if anyone has a friend that's moving into film that wants to hear it. It'll be on the Emory Filmmaking Facebook group. And that's it. You guys travel safe and enjoy this holiday break.
Thanks, guys.